You're listening to the Values and Leadership Podcast, where business leaders share their stories of purposeful impact and success.
Hello, and welcome to the Values and Leadership Podcast, the podcast for innovative leaders who want to apply new ways of doing things in work to leave a remarkable legacy and have a purposeful impact on their stakeholders. I am your host, Ahmed Arif. We invite corporate leaders, advisors, and executives who believe in participative leadership and love to share their positive life and business experiences, their sense of direction, sense of meaning, and how they challenge their thinking in growing their business and the people around them to their next best stage. In this episode, we are discussing leadership beliefs about change, continual disruption and change management, the process of transformation with Ron Carucci. Ron Carucci, the best-selling author of 8 books and popular contributor at Harvard Business Review and Forbes. Ron Carucci, he is the co-founder and managing partner at Navalent. Ron is an expert on a number of topics, including the journey from startup to scale up of a young business and leading massive transformation in more mature organizations. He also advises on rising through an organization from middle management to executive leadership and more. Ron led a 10-year longitudinal study on executive transition to find out why more than 50% of leaders fail within their first 18 months of appointment, and uncovering the 4 differentiating capabilities that set successful leaders apart. Those findings are highlighted in his groundbreaking Amazon #1 book, Rising to Power, co-authored with Eric Hansen. Harvard Business Review selected that research as one of 2016 ideas that mattered most, and he recently presented it on their live series. Ron is a 2-time TEDx speaker, and you can listen to his recent TEDx talk on power. Navalent clients are Panasonic, Cargill, Cadbury Adams, Starbucks Coffee, and other great companies. Welcome to the show, Ron.
Ahmed, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
As we were discussing, this week is a hot week in USA and the election week. And I hope things now are starting to smooth down.
Well, it's certainly a very massive lesson in change management, that's for sure.
Great. You're applying your knowledge to all the aspects going around in US.
I don't know if we are or not. I hope we can see a little bit of it.
Great. So in the corporate world, where you have been focusing for the past 30 years, you have a great experience. You have met a lot of leaders, and you have made a lot of transformation within businesses. So I want to know from you, what kind of leadership assumption about change so far? Is there an example you can share of a corporate owner or a corporate executive of how do they perceive change?
I think many executives probably naively assume that change will be much easier than it actually is. They believe in their compelling vision. They believe in, or there's a lot of pain, and so there's a need for change. And they confuse conceiving the change and announcing the change with actually implementing the change. And very often that's what causes it to fail. I remember working with a very large food company who had some really important changes they needed to make to their global organization, the way they were structured, and the culture that came with that structure. And we spent months designing the organization. We spent months debating the option for the globe and for how they would go to market with their restaurants. And when it was done and we announced to the whole world what the organization would look like, the CEO seemed relieved. And I said, well, we haven't done anything yet. The actual work starts now. You have to actually stand up the organization. And you could hear in his voice, he said, you mean there's more? And I think he just somehow thought that this would just take care of itself. Having announced what the intention of the change was, people would just step up and make it real. I think many leaders don't appreciate how difficult it is to guide a large body of people through a major change because they're ahead of the curve, right? They've gone through all the emotional angst and difficulty and struggles of that change earlier. And by the time it gets time to tell everybody else, they've already worked it through. And they forget that everybody else is just beginning their change journey. And so they get impatient and they just assume it will all just go quickly.
So one of the things is that there is an impatient and they want others to do the hard work that they have done already before. And they think it is, for them, the game is over.
And I'm not even sure they understand that there's actually hard work to do. I think many of them think that if they declare it, if they announce it, and they have a few slides or do a video, that's change. I don't think they appreciate that there's months and months, sometimes years of work to actually transform a company from one thing to another. When you're talking about thousands of people, it just takes more time. And I think for them, they get bored. They want to move on to the next thing. They're over it. And I think that's why you have so many changes fail. And I think so many variety of research statistics show that about 60 to 70% of major change efforts fail. And that's one of the major reasons why.
But this is due to the current business climate, which requires things to be done just like that. They want results. They don't care for the quality and all of these things. So people are accustomed to do things just quickly and just do it without taking much time to ponder and to reflect and to correct what was wrong. So maybe this is why.
I think it's a good point, Ahmed. I think certainly part of it is we have this need for immediate gratification, right? Google has taught us that we can answer any question in 2 seconds. And so we have, microwaves taught us, 30 years ago, we could have food instantly hot. And so I do think we do have an instant mindset. But I think even more than just our desire for things to go faster than they really can, I think sometimes we don't even realize that there's work to do. I think many leaders think that if they just take the org chart and just cut it up and rearrange it, that they actually get changed behavior, which of course is not true. And so I think often when my clients call me, it's after 2 or 3 attempts at change have failed. And they're frustrated. They don't understand why it didn't work. We told them, we showed them, we presented to them. Why didn't it work? And they don't realize it's because you didn't implement it. You didn't engage them. You didn't help them find their way. You didn't recreate the way they have to work. You didn't show them the new behavior. You just imposed it on them. And that's very different. How many people in the world have you say, I want to lose weight, I want to go on a diet? It's no different than saying, I really wanted to lose 30 pounds. I ate carrots yesterday. I didn't lose any weight. Why? You ate carrots for a day. Why did you think that was going to, but somehow we thought, I made effort. I did something. And yes, you did. You ate carrots for a day. Now eat carrots for 8 more months and go to the gym and work out and stop eating potato chips. Stop drinking beer. But somehow people forget that sustained effort over time is what actually gets change to stick. Using the diet example, I ate carrots for a whole week and I lost a whole pound. That's progress. And suddenly they stop eating carrots. And suddenly that pound is back quickly because they got a little taste of change. And it was a good effort, but it wasn't real change. And like most of us in our personal lives who want to make personal change, it's no different with organizations. Leaders want change. They recognize change is needed, but the actual hard work and effort, sustained effort over many, many months, even years, they don't want that part.
You mentioned really great points. You mentioned that we are accustomed to instant gratification. And this is a huge point, and we need to have a kind of delayed gratification, which is a skill. And we need to, as you mentioned, we need time to internalize it and make it into a habit. And as you mentioned as well, we need to stop doing things. In your analogy for the diet, we need to stop doing things in order to be able to include new habits into our daily life so that we generate different results over time. As you mentioned, we need time. It's not a matter of just like that. No, it needs time.
Yeah.
And does this leads us to your concept of continual disruption, that change management is the new management?
Yeah. Well, I think if you think about how many forces outside our organizations are constantly assaulting us. You have technological changes. You have here in the United States, we have big government changes. You have competitive changes. You have regulatory changes. There's like the ground is constantly shifting and moving. There's no more leaders who grew up in their business careers in the 80s and 90s and even in the early 2000s. There were periods of stasis. You have change and disruption and discontinuity, and then it would be a little bit stable, and then it would change. That's not the case anymore. It is one constant, continuous stream of changes and adaptation, which is why we now love the word agile. We love the word adaptability. We love putting words to it. But what it actually requires in terms of, constantly reconfiguring our work, constantly adapting to new technologies, constantly watching competitor moves and deciding, do they matter? Do I have to chase it, or do I stay the course on the strategy that I'm on? It's a constant calibration of what's happening. Then inside your company, you have changing values of people in the workforce. You have changing requirements. Oh yeah, we have a pandemic. And now people can't go to the office. And so we're trying to figure out, how do we accommodate people's needs? And so we're constantly being asked to shift, to adapt. And that is the new normal. I think many leaders, I think human beings are comfort-seeking machines. We like stability. We like predictability. But the only thing we can predict right now is that we're going to have to change at some point. And if you get too comfortable or too complacent in a particular way, an approach to management, a product you like, the way you run your team meetings, it can be anything, and are not willing to let it go when the time comes, you're probably going to lead to your own demise because you'll get left behind.
It's going to lead to your own demise. I like this one. Because there is a lot of businesses that was there featuring in the Forbes 500, and now it is extinct there anymore in the 500 list. And this company is stopped already. And the people lost their position. The owners lost their money, their business. So is it because that people are always looking in what is in it for me? And as you mentioned, the instant gratification, everybody wants the fruit of their work just now.
I think sometimes, Ahmed, people are self-interested. That is part of they get very insular. But I think sometimes the greatest impediment to change is success. I've already been successful. I'm doing very well. And so I'm comfortable. So I don't feel a need to change. I think when you're in pain, when something's not working, when your business is failing, the pain is going to motivate you to change, right? Nobody really wants to go on a diet and lose weight until your doctor says you're going to have a heart attack, or you're diabetic, or you're at risk of getting cancer. Suddenly, I'm going to go to the gym, right? But when there's no pain, when you're comfortable, and when you have been rewarded by the marketplace with great success, the last thing you're going to think about doing is changing, because you don't want to give up that success. And yet, that very success is what's going to blind you to the most important opportunities to change, because the further out you can see change, the more it becomes an opportunity. The closer you get to that need to change, the more it becomes a threat.
Great point when you mentioned that leaders have, or owners have, experienced success and being rewarded by the market. That's why they are very sticking to their beliefs. And definitely, as long as you are very much aware of that, and you have done transformation with companies that have been able to adapt themselves to do the opposite and change this kind of beliefs. So can you tell us, through your experience, the duration of this kind of transformation to change this old beliefs that lead to success in the past? How long does it take? Does it take 1 year, 2 years? Is it a static time, or is it different depending on the corporate culture or depending on the leader beliefs? Can you give us more about that?
I think it sometimes depends certainly on how big the change you're making is. And certainly the size of your company. A company that's 500 employees, you can see change much quicker than you can in a company that's 50,000 employees. So that's certainly a major factor. How broken things were. If you walk into your doctor and you say, I'm having chest pains right here, right? You don't want the doctor to say, oh, you need a stent, let's go put one in. You want the doctor to say, well, let's get an MRI, let's do a diagnosis, right? And sometimes we go in and do our diagnoses. I call it our MRI of the organization. We think we might find one clogged artery, but then I find that you need a heart transplant. Like, it's just worse than you thought. It's stage 4. And so now you have sharper work to do. You have harder decisions to make. You have fewer options than you thought. You waited too long to call me. And so I think it depends on how bad things are, and are you behind? Are you reacting to a change, or are you anticipating the change? If you're anticipating the change, it's a little bit more of a luxury. But you should assume you're going to be measuring this in years, not months.
Mm-hmm.
Because now it might be a year and a half, 2 years, but it's not going to be weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to conceive the change, validate that the change is right, test the change, and then
Mm-hmm.
actually implement the change. And that takes lots and lots of time because, just like our bodies, an organization is a system. And systems like the status quo. Just like when you put medicine in your body, like an antibiotic, your body fights it. Even though your body needs it, it fights it. When you put change into an organization, even if it's good change, the system will still resist it. The system will want to regress back to what it knows. So even if you continue to push the system to change, what's familiar is what it's going to gravitate towards. So you have to keep fighting against that gravitational pull of comfort to push it until you have a new normal, until you have a new established change where that becomes the new norms. And that takes time.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes I go to other advisors' website and they said there is something called quick wins. We need to give people a hope and we need to give them something that they can be happy about and they feel good about themselves so that they can continue this long trip that you are just describing. So in your practice, did you find that working or did you put that as a kind of the carrot for the people so that they feel that they achieved something, or did it work before with you or no?
So it's a very funny concept, quick wins, because it's countering. I mean, there's nothing really quick about a win, right? They're hard to get. Now, people on a long-term journey of change, if people feel like it's hopeless, if people don't have a sense that they're making progress, of course they'll become discouraged and they'll want to quit or they'll want to give up too soon, because long-term change is hard. So you have to show them progress. You absolutely have to say, there's progress here. So when you get from here to here, that's progress, and you can celebrate this. The key is to celebrate it for what it is. It's here to here. It's not here to here. When we talk about this as if it's this, you fool people into a false sense of accomplishment that isn't there. So learning to honestly celebrate the incremental steps you make and truly celebrate them for what they are. They're good things, but they're incremental steps. They are not the destination. Is a very different thing. And I think sometimes leaders overreach on the definition of what a win is and try and make it more than it is. Under the guise of, I'm going to make them more, I'll get people really happy, I'll get them motivated, they'll get really excited, and they'll want to keep going. Well, they won't. They'll actually get confused because if you declare victory versus a small win, or it sounds like you're declaring victory versus a small win, they'll think, well, then why is there more to do? I thought we're done. People will feel like you deceive them when the hard work actually arrives. So the notion that we want to keep people engaged and hopeful in the face of hard change is a good thing. And celebrating key milestones and progress and pointing out important, measurable progress, even if it's not the final outcome, is a good thing to do. But how you do it, honestly, is really the key.
Great. So from your practice, you find that it's very important to celebrate key milestones and to have a measurable progress so that you can celebrate and declare that this is not a victory, this is just a step on the road. There is a road and we have to cut it all together, but we need to celebrate from time to time, especially on achieving special key milestones. So this is the best thing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Is there an example of a client of you that have done this kind of celebration of the key milestones?
Sure. I worked with a large biopharmaceutical company, and with one large section of that company, there was a lot of change to be had. When the leader took over this particular part of the organization, it was quite a mess. He was very attentive to making sure that at key parts of the journey of change, he not only thanked people individually and reward and sort of encouraged them individually, but even as his whole team got them together and told them how much he appreciated the hard work and told them why he was proud and expressed why the accomplishments were really important. Because, the whole process took about a year and a half, and it wasn't even that big of an organization, but it was big enough. It was complex enough because it was global that it needed a lot of nuanced change in different parts of the world. But he was very attentive to making sure that along the way, people knew how appreciative he was of the work, but never declared premature victory.
Great. So even small things like saying thank you and explaining why This can be very engaging to the employees and can help in promoting the message that we are progressing and we are on the right track.
And also asking important questions like, tell me what was hard about it. Asking people to tell the story of the work they've done so far makes them feel proud. When you say to somebody, wow, I'll bet getting to this milestone was hard. Tell me how you did it. They come to life. They become animated. Listening to the stories of the progress is a huge part of reinforcing the change. And also asking people, what did you learn? How have you become better? How has the process helped improve you? I can see how you helped improve our organization through your work, but how has it made you better? People love to talk about what they're learning. So there's lots of ways you can check in with people on the progress and make the progress count for something really important.
Great. So there's various ways like celebration, like asking people questions, listening to the stories of success, asking what process did they do, what did they learn themselves, the people during the transformation. Do you think of any other examples?
I once had one leader. He was leading a very massive transformation, and he was very keen on visiting locations of the organization and checking in on the change. So he would show up during when the change teams were doing their work. He would show up during the work to check in with them. He'd send in lunch or he'd send in meals. And we, as the consultants, would talk to him and say, hey, check in with this person or check in with this person when we knew some people were struggling. And so, and that was 2 years of hard transformation. It was a very difficult change. And when it came time to launch the new change, officially stand up the new organization, he was amazingly celebratory. He made a big event out of it. There was lots of celebrations and dinners and parties and lots of acknowledgement and recognition for people. And he stayed the course. He put measures in place on people's performance commitments. He made sure that communications were tracked. So he was very diligent in the implementation of change along the way. And he was a kind of leader that people wanted to be around. He was very motivating. He was very inspiring. And he was visionary. He really had a picture for why we were doing this. And he didn't relent. Even in the face of resistance, he didn't relent.
You mentioned really great points here. This leader, he left his office. He didn't spend his time on his PC checking emails and letting others do the work. No, he was involving with the people. He left his office. He goes to several locations and he made commitment on people. And I inferred from what you said that he put KPIs on them to make sure that they achieve progress on the plan of the transformation.
Yes,
correct?
It was measured. Yep. And when people fell behind, he talked about why. He wanted to understand what do you need, where are you falling short, and why. But people were held accountable.
Great. And this is very important because during the time of change, if this change is not materialized into KPIs and targets, because people understand KPIs and targets more than just theorizing or saying that we are doing a change. But when it's KPI or it's target, then as you said, it's measured, it's feasible, and actually the follow-up, as you mentioned, he is following up what happened, what didn't happen, why it was late or something like that. So this is really, I find it very practical, and this example is very nice. Great. And now the transformation process itself, regarding the transformation process itself, can you share an example of a client that you have enabled to achieve a transformation in the 3 domains? I know you have 3 domains that you like to explain the process to your clients. So can you please share with us the transformation 3 domains?
Mm-hmm. So we think about change. Our language, we use words are within, between, and among. Mm-hmm. So change within is change inside my heart and my soul and my mind. It's how I think. It's how I see the world. It's deep within the leader. Change has to happen there for change to stick. Change between is relational change. So it's change between leaders and their relationship with other leaders. It's change between functions, right? So sales and marketing, operations and supply chain, the classic places where you have border wars, getting change to happen so there's more cohesion. And then change among is systemic change. It's strategic change in direction of the company. It's cultural change. It's governance change. It's the core processes that transcend the enterprise. So within, between, among. any transformation that's going to stick has to have change in all three. Unfortunately, many organizations don't do that. They focus on one of those. So they'll do change within. Everybody will get personal coaching, or go to a workshop on finding my purpose. Or they'll do change between. They'll do team building with everybody. Or they'll do people together to talk about their relationships and get along better. Or they'll do a trust workshop. Or they'll do a change among. They'll do a reorganization or restructuring. They'll announce a new strategy. Or they'll announce new values for the culture. And sometimes the change they do in any one of those is actually good change. They do a very good work. But they left the other two unaddressed. And so any one of if you do change among and change between really well, but you don't change the way leaders think, they're not going to be able to participate long term. If you change the way leaders think and behave within and change their relationships, but you don't change the way governance happens, for example, they won't be able to make good decisions. So they're very interdependent domains. And if you don't make change happen in all three, eventually the change will fail. In one very large transformation we did with a CEO who had been a client for a very long time, we knew we were able to identify early on what the types of changes that would have to happen are within, between, and among. So we did a major new organization design and culture at the among level. At the between level, we knew that there were functions that were going to need to work differently together. So we did what we call seam startups. So the seams of the organization, we brought all those functions together, seam by seam by seam, and did major work with them at the seams so they could stitch their relationship together very differently. And then for change within, we made sure the top 40 executives got very deep coaching on their own leadership for 6 months. So we made sure we had the right change and the right work being done within, between, and among for the better part of a year and a half, 2 years. And the transformation was very successful.
Great. This example is very vivid and very nice. What was the executive and the employees' reaction after that? What was their testimonial? What was their feeling? What did they share with you?
Well, they were grateful. They said that they probably would not have succeeded without our help, which is obviously very gratifying for us. But more than anything else, I think what they said was they're launching new products. They're making money. They were looking to sort of get bought into a bigger portfolio. They got a huge multiple price when they sold themselves into a bigger company that they never would have gotten because they were in such bad shape. So I think more than anything else, seeing people be proud of their company again, seeing people excited about their future, and seeing them succeed, I think was probably the most gratifying thing we saw. But they were certainly very, very grateful for our help, and we still keep in touch and still talk to them very regularly.
And during this kind of the company you are talking about, did they change any kind of corporate rituals or something?
Corporate rituals?
Yeah. So like, how do they deal with each other?
Oh my gosh!
Emails,
They dramatically changed how they work together. When we got there, it had been a very cutthroat environment. It was very competitive, very secretive, very distrustful. And that dramatically changed. The senior leadership team was much more cohesive. Some of them didn't make it. Some of them had to be removed. But the new leadership team of the company and the successive levels were much more trusting, much more open, much more transparent. They were much more hopeful, and they took more risks. They fixed some of the major operational problems that we discovered in our diagnosis. Their ability to launch new products was dramatically improved. One of the KPIs they had set was, a certain portion of their revenue coming from new product launches in the coming years. But because of the way marketing and consumer insights and innovation and manufacturing work together, they were badly broken relationships, so they didn't have what they needed to work together to produce new products. So we got them in a room and fixed all the between issues of them and fixed some of the among processes and built trust among them so they could be truly an innovation unit to launch products. So they significantly changed the way they worked together and the way they saw their work.
Great. Was there any reflection on the compensation design?
So there could have been. That usually isn't part of our work. I think the reward systems are something you design last. I think one of the challenges that was changed was that many of the bonuses, for executive compensation were rewarded on individual performance. And I think they changed some of the bonus targets to be much more shared outcomes. So people were rewarded for shared success more than they were before.
Great. So everybody has to be included in the hard work and in the reward as well.
Yes.
Great. I think this is a very nice example that you just mentioned now. And through your experience now and all the successful and non-successful engagement, I mean the people who refuse to change, or people who find it difficult to change, and the people who find their way to change. Now you mentioned something that in the last example, that people were more trustful with each other. They were able to take risk. They were able to put new KPIs. So it seems that their mentality to business has changed differently.
I think that's happening in the world. I think people are starting to recognize that business can play so much more of a role in the world than just to make money or just to reward shareholders. I think people are looking at stakeholder centricity and thinking about suppliers and employees and local communities and customers as equally important stakeholders. And so I think the role of business and the mentality toward business is changing in the world, thank goodness. I think we are finding far more conscious companies who care more than just about rewarding their shareholders, which is very good.
So they managed to achieve something of a holistic mindset, not only, as you mentioned, the shareholder mindset, but as well to expand it and to include others in the success from them.
Yes.
Great. Really, I'm very grateful to have you on for this short conversation. And definitely, if it was longer, we would share more successful stories. But I think you have given us a lot of huge insights. And thank you very much for your time.
And it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you very much. Thanks.